The voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Apple. I'll tell you, not a big fan of Apple myself. I personally do not own a single Apple product. Not at all. Not an Apple fan at all. But hey, a lot of people do, making them the most valuable company in the world. Apple today, evidently, it is announced that they are the first U.S. company to be valued at $2 trillion. Write that down. It's a 2 and then 12 zeros. You'll get writer's cramp by the time you end with the zeros. They are the first company to hit that mark. And look, their value has doubled in just over 2 years. Their stock prices have jumped 60% this year alone, despite all of the pandemic and the shutdown and all of the stuff that's come around with it. So they are doing wildly freaking well. Wildly well. In its third quarter report, they reported revenues of $59.7 billion. Despite all of the lockdown, all of the stuff, their online sales, fantastic. August of 2018, just 2 years ago, they were the first company to hit a $1 trillion market cap. This July, they passed Saudi Arabia's Aramco as the world's most valuable company. So they are it. Amazon's growing, but Apple's it, man. And the thing is I saw this story and it made me go, well, that's great for the people who own Apple. That's great for the people who run Apple. That's great. It's great for them. But what about the millions of people who are unemployed? What about the millions of people who they're screwed because of this? And it got me thinking about, as I focus on this program quite often, the war between capital and labor, the war between big monopolistic businesses like Apple and the little guy, the person who's got to go out there and, sling the hash and drive the truck and hammer the nails and put the wires together and all of that. How it seems like the game is just overwhelmingly rigged against average everyday working people. And this is one of those stories where you go, wow, it's pretty amazing. So when I saw this story by Felix Salmon over at Axios, because this is where my mind was going after I'm reading the Apple story. I see this title, the triumph of capital over labor, and I'm going, what? Someone's actually talking about this other than me? Thank you. So I get into the article and they point out that while the S&P 500 is just skyrocketing at a record high, and I guess has gained like 55% since March. They point out that this is pretty much the end of that war between capital and labor. Capital has certainly won. And they point out that in this article, Felix points out that thanks to the recession, because of the virus and all of this, the share of economic activity that is shared with labor has diminished to a historic low. He points out that usually 2/3 of the economic output goes to the workers. Their pay, their benefits. So 2/3 of the pie goes to the people who actually go out there and do the work and create the wealth. The other third is given to the owners of whatever the company or whatever entity it is, and that's theirs. Now, I've been saying for a long time that's changing. And that has everything to do with the attack on organized labor. It has everything to do with the attack on workers that have been going on for the last 40 years, and accelerated in the last 20. And Felix points out that this has been going on, in his view, at an accelerated pace since 2000. He writes that now that America's workforce has been decimated by COVID-19 pandemic, the share of the national income being kept by workers could hit a new record low. He says, the bottom line is unclear how or whether workers will be able to regroup and reclaim more of the fruits of their labors, so long as capital retains the upper hand. An increasing share of corporate revenues will show up as profits. And I've been saying this for years. Nothing is given. The benevolent owners, they do not share willingly. Maybe a penny, maybe some pennies in praise occasionally, but nothing substantial, because they want it all. They want more. They always want more. And I point to Amazon. Obviously, Apple being what caught my attention, but Amazon is having just an incredibly huge year. And according to their most recent earnings report, they're going to pay virtually nothing in taxes. They claim from the report that their pre-tax earnings for the quarter was $6.2 billion, which is more than double of what it was in 2019. Thank you, pandemic. And thanks to my wife, who does a lot of Amazon ordering since we're holed up. The first half of this year, their cumulative pre-tax income, $9.6 billion. That's just the first half of the year. Now, last year, the entire year was only $13.9 billion. So they're on pace to dwarf last year's pre-tax revenue income. Now, remember, last year they paid nothing in federal taxes. Nothing. On almost $14 billion in profits. I look at this as another one of these moments because in their report, they write, for 2020, we estimate that our effective tax rate will be favorably affected by the impact of excess tax benefits from stock-based compensation and U.S. federal research and development credits. This is how they've been getting away with not paying taxes for the last several years. Everything's stock-based, so we don't have to pay tax on that. And, we're doing all this research and development and all of that, which is how they're shuffling things around. And it's perfectly legal. Look, you'd be an idiot not to do it. So I'm not blaming Amazon. I'm not. This isn't Amazon's fault. Amazon is simply powerful enough, big enough, strong enough, has enough resources to hire teams of tax avoidance lawyers to use every loophole available and maximize their tax their avoidance. It's not their fault, and I'm not. It's rare you're going to hear me say it's not a company's fault. This isn't their fault. This is our political system's fault. This is creating these loopholes and allowing them to use them at the pace that they're using them. If you're making this kind of massive profit, you got to pay some tax on it. So there's got to be some kind of an alternative minimum tax for corporate America. But thanks to Trump and thanks to Bush and thanks to Reagan and thanks to all of these massive tax handouts, because hey, tax cuts create jobs. Even we know that's a fallacy. What we've done is we've created this again. In the war between capital and labor, which is always going on and never going to end. Sorry, there's never an ending to this. They've decided the winners. For all the talk of picking winners and losers that we heard during the Obama term about investing in solar and all that, this is really picking winners and losers. And the winners are the people who control all the capital, and the losers are, the rest of us. And this, kind of plays into what I talked about yesterday or on Monday when I said, look, I look at the Black Lives Matter folks and I say, I agree, Black Lives Matter. I look at the Blue Lives Matters folks and I go, yep, Blue Lives Matter. I hear the All Lives Matter people talking about that and go, yep, right there with you. But my thing is, to the people who run these organizations, the people who are the really powerful folks, none of our lives matter. None of us matter. And that has everything to do with the fact that you look at the share of our work and our sweat equity and everything that we as working people do being, well, taken away and diminished. And, obviously the owners are doing much better. And this is one of those moments where I'm hoping, if we can agree on anything, and I know I've been hammering on this lately a lot because it's been front and center on my mind, is that we return reward to work. How do we return to a more sane and rational distribution of the wealth this country has, and recreate that prosperous working class? And I know the argument is, well, we need to give the smart people all the money, because if we give the smart people money, they're going to know what to do with it, and it's going to benefit us all. And that's not even remotely close to the truth. It's going to benefit the people you gave the money to. We know that. And it never trickles down. Maybe they buy a seventh boat, and yes, maybe the folks who make boats will make out a little bit. But if you're paying them poverty wages, how much? I mean, this is one of these moments where I keep coming back to, for me, the reality is, if you want to fix our economy, if you want to fix a lot of our societal problems, we create the ability for workers to organize and fight for better wages, hours, conditions, to fight for that reward to work that I talk about. That idea that if you work hard, play by the rules, you actually get ahead and have some hope for the future. This kind of, and I hate to use unfair, but it's probably the only word I can think of, this kind of rigged tax game that benefits the Amazons, that benefits the Apples, that benefits the handful. I know they say it's a S&P 500. It's really not 500 companies. I mean, there are like 10 probably massive global corporations that control virtually everything. And those are the folks who are paying nothing. And the thing is again, you go back to this push-pull, this constant fight between capital and labor. And you look at the Amazons and the Apples, who are overwhelmingly winning this war. And then you look at the story from New York City, where they're the union head there of the fire department, the EMS union, is saying, look, there's going to be hundreds of EMS workers laid off. We're going to be laying off, hundreds, because the city doesn't have any money. And you go, how is it that the city doesn't have any money? Oh yeah, we gave all the tax money away. In a place, New York City, that has, probably the most wealth possible. It is the heart of all of our economic system. The fact that they're going to be laying off EMS workers because they don't have any money is incredible to me. But again, this is another one of those battles in the war between capital and labor. We've chosen as a society that the big corporations, the very wealthy, should pay less taxes because they're smart. They know what to do with the money. And what they usually do is make more money. Yes, for themselves. But the rest of us kind of screwed. And, when we had a much higher tax rate, you go back, from, World War II all the way up through Kennedy, into Kennedy, you had a 92% top marginal rate. From Kennedy to Reagan, it was 70%. Now understand, none of the rich paid that massive tax because there were all kinds of loopholes to be able to avoid some of it. The research that I've seen, that 92% top marginal rate was actually somewhere in the 60s. Because people donated libraries, people donated money to hospitals, and people put their name on buildings and universities and all kinds of stuff. And that trickled down to the rest of us because we got an infrastructure. You see a lot of, I go to college campuses, you see a lot of people's names on those buildings. That was a tax dodge, but it benefited society. Now the tax dodges that we've allowed go to the very wealthy. We now have Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world. Why? Giant tax dodge. Incredible, incredible moments. But for me, at the end of it, this is another example of why we're losing. And the more we're divided and the more we're pitted against each other, the more we lose. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Olga Lumpman's going to be here, share some thoughts on the drop of the Senate bipartisan report on Russia and the Trump campaign. A quick break, back with our expert on that. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1965. That was the day 53 construction tradesmen were killed in a fire at the Titan II ICBM launch complex near Searcy, Arkansas. It is considered one of the worst industrial accidents at a U.S. nuclear weapons facility. The complex was one of 4 sites containing Titan II missiles. Each missile weighed 340,000 pounds, measuring 103 feet in length and 10 feet in diameter. President Johnson had just committed more troops to the Vietnam War. The Air Force had hoped to strengthen the silo against a possible Soviet attack. They had contracted with Peter Kiewit and Son of Colorado to bring in electricians, carpenters, millwrights, painters, and pipe fitters for a number of tasks. Crews worked to shore up the silo, improve the blast doors, adjust hydraulics, and install emergency lighting. 52 of the 55 workers on all 9 levels of the silo were almost immediately asphyxiated when it suddenly filled with smoke and heat. The Air Force determined a welder on level 2 had accidentally pierced a high-pressure hydraulic line, igniting the fire. Investigators also concluded that the silo lacked adequate ventilation, alternative exits, and independent power sources. The contractor was held responsible for numerous safety violations, contributing to unsafe work conditions. The welder was found drowned in hydraulic fluid. 2 survivors suffered burns and smoke inhalation. They contested the Air Force's findings. One worker insisted no one had been welding on level 2. The other survivor stated he saw flames burst from the diesel engine just before the power went out. Both men insisted the fire started from below. By 1981, 2 more deadly accidents involving Titan II missiles would prompt President Reagan to order their deactivation. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I've been saying about this Senate report that they dropped yesterday, I'm still curious why the Republicans chose to drop it at all. Why they didn't just hold it into committee and maybe one of the Democrats had leaked it. I don't know, but interesting timing. I got to be honest, interesting timing on how this dropped. And to be honest, as I've said, it plays into what I've said from the very beginning. That the Trump campaign was all over the Russian assets, and there was tons of cooperation. And I know we're gonna bicker over the word cooperation and collusion, but they seem kind of similar to me. And here to share some thoughts on the most recent report, the bipartisan report from the Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. I've asked Olga Lumpman to come talk with us. Olga is a researcher on Russian issues and Ukrainian issues. She is, in my view, the expert on this subject. Olga, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for having me on.
So, let's start with this report. Are you surprised that they dropped it the way they did?
Not really. I mean, it's actually infuriating because they drop a report that basically verifies everything that has been reported that we have known over the past, 4 years. right in the middle of the Democratic convention, you
Yeah.
know, and as a result, the report is getting zero coverage. Meanwhile, it affirms that Trump and his cronies were conspiring and working with the Kremlin in order to steal the U.S. election in 2016. And that is something that every American should have, like that, full attention should be provided to this report. And as a result, it's smack in the middle of the convention. It's being drowned out.
Yeah, so you're arguing that it was a smart thing to do it right now because nobody's going to pay attention because we're all celebrating, Biden and Harris. So this probably was the right time to drop it if you're a Republican then.
And for the Republicans, it's the perfect timing. Absolutely.
But I guess as someone who has spent years looking into this, and someone who has dug deeper than probably anybody I know into this. Was there anything in this report that you go, oh, that's new? Or as you just said, was this all stuff we already knew?
Actually, I went through the 966-page report yesterday, and I mean, I personally knew everything in the report. I actually could have filled it in a little bit more, and I think the report was taken a lot from like open source, information, and then, things that have been reported, and I'm sure, the redacted part was from our intelligence and law enforcement communities. But no, there was nothing shocking. I mean, the Manafort is an agent of Russia working with Putin for the past, few decades. That is known. Anyone in Ukraine would have known that years ago, even before he reached the Trump campaign. And again, it goes back to the whole issue that Roger Stone and Paul Manafort are both central figures in this report, and they both know Donald Trump since 1980. I mean, Manafort lived in Trump Tower from 2006 on. Roger Stone, has been in and out of Trump's life for the past 40 years. So again, it's what this report proves is that Trump and his trusted few worked with the Kremlin to steal our election.
Right. And it also says, and again, you're the expert in this. It also says that they're still doing it, and we've done nothing to even come close to defending ourselves, or because look, this is an act of war in my view.
It is war. It is. It's a hybrid war, and what enrages me is that if the Kremlin had dropped a bomb in a U.S. city, that would have caught the attention of everyone, and Americans would unite, and they would know that we're under attack. But because of this hybrid warfare, and because of the way the Kremlin conducts their active measures, it's turned into a partisan issue over the past several years. Meanwhile, this is exactly the same method they've used in 37 countries that they've attacked. Their elections, or whether it be political parties, or, whether it be partnering with the far right and causing division in the country. I mean, this is something that they continue to use, but somehow in America it became a bipartisan issue. A partisan issue where Republicans are trying to say nothing happened, and Democrats, are showing the facts that we are under attack. And Russia hasn't stopped, and that's what worries me. There are two things that worry me about the report. One is that Republicans knew this going into impeachment. They knew that Trump was working with the Kremlin in order to steal the election in 2016. They knew the Kremlin was attacking us in a multifaceted attack using many methods in order to install Trump into the White House. And they refused to have witnesses. I have yet to hear any strong statement from Mitch McConnell, and it's his committee that, basically ruled what everybody has been reporting the past 4 years. And the second thing that worries me is that this time one of the attacks is going through Ukraine. Putin is using his operatives, Zerkich and Telizhenko, in Ukraine to attack our elections, and they're working with Barr, with Trump, with Giuliani, in order to damage Biden. And I worry that it might actually go into a Belarus type situation where they actually want to prosecute people around Biden or even Biden himself because of the things that have been happening in Ukraine that I have been, following very closely. And we still have done nothing to protect ourselves. And it is still, the Republicans are blocking everything. Trump is now a full autocrat. He's not even hiding that he doesn't plan to leave the White House. He even is barricading the White House with, these strange fences that keep going up every day. It's more and more fortified. And they've done nothing. And that's my biggest worry because everybody is acting as if we're going to have fair and free elections, whereas Trump is telling us every day, no, we're not. I might not accept the results and I'm not leaving, or I might push an election because of coronavirus that he is making sure spreads across America, No,
I mean, we're in really scary times. I mean, this is the kind of, if you'd have told me this stuff 5-10 years ago, that this is where we would be in this moment, I go, no, this is the stuff that happens in third world developing countries. This is the stuff that happens with, tin pot dictators. And yet here we are.
Same, trust me, I feel the same way because, I came from the Soviet Union and I mean, America has always been, strong and America, like Republicans were always hawkish against the Kremlin. They always understood the threat. And until 2016, if someone told me, I mean, I know the capabilities of the Kremlin and, what they can do, but I never thought the Republicans would basically work with them in order to maintain power.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about that for a second, because that's an interesting. I've had this conversation with some of my Republican friends who now have taken the Donald Trump. Well, we should be friends with Russia now because they're no longer the red communists. They're not the USSR like they were in the past. They're capitalists. They're like us. Is the kind of
worse
thought process. So you're saying they're even worse than that?
Putin is actually worse. His ambitions are, endless, and he seeks the ultimate destruction and humiliation and destruction of America. He still blames us for the collapse of the Soviet Union, which for him was one of the greatest catastrophes. And not only does he seek our destruction and the destruction of the West and all the alliances, that we've had post-World War II, he has the capabilities of doing it. And he has shown that he's doing it. And he doesn't, in his goals, he wants to reinstate USSR back and weaken the West. So I don't understand this reset. Putin has done nothing to show that the Kremlin is worthy of a reset. If anything, there have been a string of Chechen assassinations across Europe. Putin used a chemical weapon in Britain on Skripal. The assassinations continue. Right now, as we speak, Putin is intervening in Belarus, and the last I checked, his technicians and specialists from Russia today have taken over the Belarus TV stations. So absolutely not. He's still in Ukraine. There is a daily war in Ukraine. We're losing people in Ukraine, every single day from his multiple attacks. If anything, he has more ambitions to take more of Ukraine. So he's done nothing to show this. And even the fact that Trump is inviting him to be part of G7, that's an insult to all our allies, to everyone that he is a threat to.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while that they want to get the old gang back together, and they are. The sad reality is, and we're not doing anything now. The other day, Trump actually retweeted, I guess, some audio of a phone call between the Ukrainian leader and Joe Biden that even our intelligence service said was Russian propaganda. It came from the Russians. We've got a president who's actively promoting their attacks. It's one thing to ignore them. It's one thing to allow it to happen, but it's another thing to actually be part of the promoting of it.
Well, because he works for the Kremlin. It's very simple. And he's worked with the Kremlin, way before Putin, since the 1980s. He worked with the Kremlin, from his, even before his 87 trip. Then he worked with Russian mafia for, 35 years plus years, laundering billions for them. He's had endless of Russian agents living in his house, in his properties, whether it be Trump Tower, Trump UN, Trump Sunny Isles. He has partnered with probably the worst of the worst of the Russian oligarchs who are, at one point or another were KGB agents or worked with intelligence services. So for him, his loyalty lies to the Kremlin. That is his bread and butter. He's in partnership with the Kremlin. And, of course, if he does everything openly. He's openly working with the Kremlin to steal now 2020 elections and to cheat and to rig the election. And again, I never thought in America that I would be saying that, our elections are in danger, but this is the reality. I don't think we're going to have fair and free elections. I mean, not unless Republicans, some Republicans wake up and partner with Democrats and say, no, we cannot have this, experiment of a democracy fail. So no, and I've been following, like I said, I've been following Ukraine very closely. I deal with sources there daily. I'm getting information. I put together, information on this attack, and I mean, it's dangerous what's happening because there's a criminal investigation against Joe Biden by Putin's thugs in Ukraine. And then you have Durkic. I mean, Durkic, the fact that, and that's another problem with our media. They, clean everything up and normalize it. Like Durkic, like when they refer to him, it's a Ukrainian parliamentarian. That's the furthest thing that he is. He was a KGB agent. He has been working with mafia for decades. I mean, he's very destructive for Ukraine. And the fact that someone like him is partnering with Senator Johnson, to provide information that's fabricated by Russian intelligence, that's insane. The only time I would have ever expected to see Durkic mentioned in U.S. media is if there's like an indictment from Southern District of New York for like money laundering or something, but not to be working with U.S. Senate.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's crazy, and to have them go over there on the 4th of July, that's just another one of those things where you got to question the loyalty on some level. So let me ask you. I mean, last line of questioning, because there's the Nikita Khrushchev quote that keeps flying around. In fact, I've had a couple of people who've already sent it to me, going, "See, they're gonna take the country without firing a shot," and this is an indication of this. Thoughts?
I mean, that has been their plan, and this is what they did in Europe. They've been, supporting far-right parties across Europe in order to cause major divisions and kind of, collapse and cause strains among European countries and even within the country among leadership. And this is absolutely, it's correct. This is what they're doing. And they use multiple methods, whether it be compromat that they've been collecting. Well, they always collect compromat as insurance. Right. Buying people. Every other person I see is on their payroll. I mean, even with McConnell, for instance, yesterday in the Senate report, finally, Deripaska, it was said that Deripaska, is a Russian agent working for Putin, doing his operations in countries around the world. And here you have Mitch McConnell, who voted to remove sanctions off of Deripaska's company. So McConnell is complicit. He removed sanctions off of someone who is known. Again, this report is nothing new. Anyone who knows, has been following Deripaska for decades knows that he is one of Putin's inner circles and that he has certain countries that, he influences and runs operations. Correct. So McConnell did this, but then why did McConnell do it? He got a plant in Kentucky, over this. So basically, this is what the Kremlin does. They buy people. And here Deripaska, partnered with, I think, a David Vitter at the time, in order to lobby for McConnell to drop the sanctions on his companies. That happened. David Vitter's wife became a judge, and she was completely unqualified. So it's basically corruption out in the open, and then you see why someone like McConnell refuses to acknowledge, this report and to protect our country from an attack. And I mean, they know, the Republicans know what is happening. They know that Russia is an adversary. They're never going to be, it's been, 70 plus years. We're not going to reset, at least not with this current regime. Putin is a murderous thug. Until his regime collapses, then maybe we can discuss a reset.
Yeah, you're right. But here's the thing that really infuriates me is you look at this report and all the things that I've seen in it so far, and all the things that we've been talking about for the last couple of years that now are confirmed, solidly confirmed. The Mueller report solidly confirmed that you had all of the Republicans, with the exception of Mitt Romney, who voted to exonerate this guy, who let him off the hook. I don't know that as a country they can be forgiven for that.
They can't, and I really hope that we can get Biden into the White House, and honestly, every single one of them needs to be investigated for their role of, because they're complicit. They are working with the enemy to destroy our country.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not even hyperbole. This is what is happening, and you see Putin is doing this. I mean, Trump is doing this, and Republicans are doing this every day, whether it be where have you seen a president that Russia put bounties, $100,000 per American head in Afghanistan, and our president calls it a hoax? Republicans are completely silent about it. I mean, these are our military. What happened to them supporting the military? They're sending our men and women out across the world knowing that this is happening, and then when they find out that a country is, possibly there is a case that the Belgium Secret Service is investigating in April of 2019, an attack where 3 Marines died, and they're investigating to see, at least they're investigating to see whether it was the Russian bounties, that were responsible for that. Here, complete silence.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. Trump pulls troops from Germany. This is Germany. Every American would love to be stationed in Germany. It's like one of their favorite places. And he pulls troops knowing at the same time that Putin is sending troops to the border in confrontation with NATO.
Yeah.
He pulls troops out, complete silence.
Yeah, you got to wonder what it is that they have on him. It's got to, as I've said before, it's got to be something much worse than a P tape. Maybe the QAnon people are right. Maybe there is a secret underground pedophile ring, and maybe Trump's the guy who's the head of it. Maybe that's what it is. But I can't figure it out.
I personally think it's a partnership. I personally think, it's like, I just think it's a partnership. I think that Trump, being that he's been tied to the Russian mafia for, 35 plus years, he acts like a gangster. He loves this authoritarian, power. He, loves, where that you order people to be silenced or murdered or whatever, just get rid of them. I think that's what it is. It's a partnership. That's the system that he likes. He doesn't like democracy. He doesn't like laws, and it was evident even here over the decades where he's bribing prosecutors, bribing cops, bribing everyone in order to have cases against him dropped or ruled in his favor or whatever the case is. Yeah. It's just who he is, and it's like, it's at this point, it's like trying to figure out why Assad is how he is, Putin is how he is.
Yeah,
this
good
is
point.
What Trump is.
No, you're spot on. I hope folks will take a look at your website, olgalautman.com. We'll get links out on how they can do that. Check out all of the things that you've got there, because a lot of it's dated from 2017, and it could have just dropped yesterday with the Senate report as well. But Olga, I appreciate the time. Great talk with you. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rick. Have a good night.
Stuff, as always, good stuff. Make sure you check out the website, olgalautman.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Greg Palast is going to be here to talk about the election, talk about the new book, How Trump Stole 2020. Greg's the guy who called this already, even before the Postal Service stuff came out. So we're going to talk to Greg on the other side. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1997. That was the day that a strike by the Teamsters Union against UPS ended with a victory for the union. The strike had started 15 days earlier. More than 180,000 UPS workers participated in the action. It was the first nationwide strike by UPS workers. At the time, UPS delivered 80% of all packages in the United States. The company, known for its signature brown trucks, delivered 12 million packages a day. The key issue of the strike was that the company increasingly relied on part-time workers. The insecurities of part-time work were growing not just at UPS, but for workers in industries all across the country. The strike settlement came with the union winning its core issues. The company agreed to convert 10,000 part-time jobs to full-time positions over the course of the next 5 years. The victory was significant for the U.S. labor movement. The 1980s and 1990s saw new attacks on labor unions and working people, starting with President Ronald Reagan's breaking of the Air Traffic Controller Union strike in 1981. The UPS victory in a national strike with broad rank-and-file support encouraged working people beyond the Teamsters Union. Announcing the settlement of the strike, ABC News anchor Peter Jennings declared, quote, "It's been the most dramatic confrontation between industry and organized labor in 2 decades. Teamsters President Ron Carey said, quote, "It's what this country needs. Decent jobs, a chance for the dream, a chance to purchase a home, a chance to bring your children up properly, a chance to send them to college. Enough is enough, and it's about time that people start fighting back on this." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Donald not pleased today with Mitch McConnell. He sent out a tweet tagging the majority leader for allowing the Democrats to have ridiculous post office hearings on Saturday and Monday. He's all ticked off that they didn't do it during the Democratic convention, that they're going to do it in between. And then right before the Republican convention. So Donald a little upset at that because, there's going to be a lot of bad stuff coming out about this. And I don't know that the Donald wants the bad news. But anyway, here to share some thoughts on what's going on with the Postal Service. And this election. I mean, is this the way they steal? Is this the new 2000? Well, here to share some thoughts, I've asked our good friend, investigative journalist, and author Greg Palast to come talk with us. He's got a new book out, How Trump Stole 2020. A fantastic little read. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Glad to be with you again, Rick.
So the post office, is this the smoking gun now that we're seeing?
Well, I've been talking to you about that gun and its bullets for how long? I started complaining about postal voting and the problems in my bestseller in 2008, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, or 2012, excuse me. So it's been 8 years I've been complaining about mail-in voting. This didn't start with Donald Trump. He's a fool, and I'm going to tell you why, Rick. If he were smart, he'd say, I want every Democrat to vote by mail, because you know what? 22% of all mail-in ballots are thrown in the garbage. About 1 in 10 you don't get, which just happened in Georgia. They confirmed that's typical. You saw all those lines in Georgia of all those people lined up in the middle of a pandemic Why? Because African Americans are stupid and want to just get a virus or love to hang out in the humid Atlanta rain? No, they didn't get their mail-in ballots. So not getting your mail-in ballot ain't something that Donald Trump invented. He's just making it worse.
Yeah.
Not counting your ballot, having it not delivered on time, so about 1 in 10 voters who ask for mail-in ballot don't get them or don't get them in time. Like Jerry Thomas, an African American I know in Atlanta. By the way, his wife asked for the ballot 45 days in advance because she's pretty sophisticated on these things. She's the head of the ACLU of Georgia. They still got their ballot late. So he was losing his vote. Well, in his case, he joined the line. Hopefully he doesn't get the virus. Now, what are you supposed to do? I'm telling you right now, the chance is 1 in 10 you're not going to get your ballot if you ask for it. The chance is 1 in 10 if you cast it that they're not going to count it. Because you're going to have a bunch of schmucks in Hawaiian shirts, boogaloo boys, proud boys, nutcases, and a lot of Republican lawyers who are going to be taking your mail-in ballot. Remember, it's not a secret ballot anymore. Once you mail in your vote, it's not a secret. They have your name, your registration, everything on the outside of the envelope, and they open up your ballot and look at it and see if you've properly filled it out. Did you properly vote for Hillary Clinton? Or because I know many of you, I know Rick, you said you're going to write in Hillary Clinton. That's okay with me. But you have to remember to fill in the little bubble next to it. If it says fill in the bubble, and you put in a check mark or a smiley face or an X instead of a fill in the bubble, this Republican jerk is going to challenge your ballot. And I'm not guessing that that's going to happen.
No, that's going to happen.
That's going to happen. 22% of all mail-in ballots are never counted. 22%. So if you have 120 million ballots, we're going to have about 26.5 million ballots, which are going to be thrown in the garbage. And that will be mostly, guess what color? Well, black, brown, Asian American, and of course that's bluish voters. Now, that's what's happening. But there are things you can do so that the postman doesn't eat your ballot. There's lots of things you can do. That's what I've been warning. And so in How Trump Stole 2020, I actually have an entire chapter called Mail-in Madness and how to avoid having the mailbox eat your ballot. There's ways you can do it, and you better, because the Democratic Party has no plan to save your ballot. I saw this in Michigan. In Michigan, supposedly, Donald Trump won Michigan, which is Detroit, which is Motown, which is the UAW. He supposedly won Michigan by 10,700 votes. 10,000 votes. That's
correct.
Out of 5 million. But 75,000 votes, 75,355 to be exact, were never counted, almost all in Detroit. Because the machines which read the ballots, the scanners, broke down. 87 machines broke down. The result was that 75,000 Detroiters. Now, in Detroit, whose votes were they? Were they Trump's votes? I don't
Oh, absolutely not.
So what happens is Trump didn't win Michigan, but they stole it by not counting votes. Now, those are votes at a precinct. Mail-in votes, good luck. By the way, when I went to the review of the ballots, the 75,355 ballots that were not counted, there was an attempt. By the way, the Green Party paid for those ballots to be counted. It wasn't a recount, as some people think. It's actually counting uncounted ballots, because there's a wonderful machine which rarely breaks down when you're reading a ballot. It's called the human eyeball. Whereas when you look at a ballot, a human can say, "Oh, that's a Hillary vote." Even if there was someone used red ink or a pencil or folded it wrong, the machine will kick it out. But a human eye can see a vote very clearly. The Republicans challenged every single ballot. I mean, every single ballot cast for Hillary was challenged by the GOP. And the Democrats, who did have lawyers in the room, didn't challenge a single Trump ballot, but they also didn't challenge the challenge to the Hillary votes. So don't count on the Democratic Party to save your vote. I hope that people listening here who are young, who are healthy, and are willing to play a little bit of Russian roulette with their health, that you go in as a poll watcher and you stay through the opening of the ballots on November 3rd that night, November 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 18, and 20. Okay? You got to count those ballots over the next 3 weeks. And if you're not there, the GOP will be there with lawyers and a lot of guys with weird-ass tattoos who are going to challenge your vote and everyone else that you know.
So walk us through how you want people to protect their vote and hopefully our democracy. What's the way forward? If because we're told the mail-in ballots, this is a paper trail. You here it is. It's in our hands. And I've been saying yes, they're going to
paper
challenge
trail.
every one of them, absolutely without question. The little bubble marks, your signature, they're going to test, they're going to challenge on every level possible. But at least you have a physical copy of what it is. You're saying
You
that
have
that's
a physical copy of the votes that they throw out. So 141,000 ballots were thrown out, mail-in ballots, because of a question about a signature. Now, we don't have 141,000 fraudulent voters, so make sure that you sign exactly as you did when you registered. Sign inside. There's at least 2 signatures required in every state, at least. Now, in many states, like the key states, like Wisconsin, where this election will be decided, you have to have a witness signature of a U.S. citizen. How do you know your friend is a U.S. citizen? The answer is, if they're registered to vote, they're a citizen. So make sure you get a registered voter to witness your ballot. If you're in Alabama, and where Doug Jones is fighting for his life in the Senate race, you're going to need to notarize your mail-in ballot. Notarize it. I know it's a poll tax. It's going to cost you $20. That's what it's going to cost. Stop complaining. Do it. In other states, many states require witness ballots, but they all have a lot of them have crazy rules. Like, for example, in most states, and look at your rules when you fill out your ballot, you are required to include a photocopy of your ID. And if you're in Wisconsin, don't include that student ID, because that one you can't vote with. And in Texas, if you're a student, don't include your student ID. You have to get a special ID from your school, or you got to get a non-voter ID from the DMV, which may be closed. Too bad. You're going to have to figure this out. Voting this year is going to be a bitch, and you're going to have to deal with it. Sorry if you thought you could just, 4 years ago, Obama went before a crowd in Philadelphia the night before elections. Voting, it only takes a few minutes. Of course, it only takes a few minutes where he voted in Chicago. I've been there. But it doesn't take a few minutes now. You're going to have to work hard at this. Ask for your ballot early. If you don't get it within 3 weeks of the election, you go into your board of elections and you pick it up. You fill it out right there. You hand it back and get your signature validated. Make sure, use a black or blue pen. If it says fill in the bubble, fill in the bubble. Don't put an X mark. My sister, who is a lawyer, lost her vote, mail-in vote, because in California you can actually check if your vote was counted. Hers wasn't, okay? Because she didn't properly fill in the bubble. That's a lawyer.
wow.
Right now, I want you to be careful when you fill out that ballot. Follow all the crazy directions, whatever they say. And if you get a ballot, by the way, don't put Scotch tape on it. What's wrong with you? We had like 1,000 ballots. I kid you not, like 1,000 ballots in New York, and people Scotch taped their ballots shut. You just disqualified your vote. Now, you'll say, yeah, but my ballot came with the envelope already sealed by the humidity. Or I made a mistake and I had to redo it, or whatever. Well, you're going to have to go into your Board of Elections and get a new ballot. No, you cannot use your own envelope. No, you cannot tape it back together. You got to go into the Board of Elections for your county and get another ballot. And where do you take it? Are you going to hand it to the post office? You're going to hand it to that schmuck that Donald Trump just put in charge of the post office? I wouldn't do that. No. You're going to take it in to either your board, best place is County Board of Elections. Can't do that. If there's drop boxes, use the drop boxes. And in most states, you can take your ballot. To the voting station. That way you avoid the line. You just drop off the ballot. So that's what I just did in California, where everyone gets a mail-in ballot, and I just went to the polling station, dropped it off. There's no post office involved. Your best bet is to stay away from Donald Trump's post office.
Even if they did say today that they're not going to do all the things that they said they were going to do to slow things down and destroy stuff, which I don't believe.
Yeah.
On any level.
Well, number one, what the hell does that mean that they won't? First of all, I just told you 22% of all mail-in ballots don't get counted. That was under Obama.
Right.
Okay. That was under Obama. 22% of mail-in ballots didn't get counted.
So
whatever Trump does now is just going to make it worse. So what I want you to do is be aware that, look, there's think of an alligator in the mailbox. Why would you give an alligator your ballot? So avoid the post. Don't use postal boxes. Don't use the postal service. It is not there It is not a polling station. You go to your county board of elections. You go to a polling station. You go to a drop box. You don't go to a mailbox. That's not where you vote.
I'm right there with you. I want to change topics a little bit. You know, they got the big convention going on. You paying attention to any of the convention stuff going on?
I try not to, but I can't avoid it. Go ahead.
That's probably the best answer I've heard. You know, I don't really want to, but I can't avoid it.
What can I do?
You know, I wanted to be in Milwaukee, and I've said this for a while. I missed the convention stuff, but this
By the way, I was just in Milwaukee. You know why I was in Milwaukee?
Why?
Because the GOP is sued the state, Tony Evers, the new governor, the Democratic governor, to require the state to remove 152,000 voters from the voter rolls because Trump won that state supposedly by 22,000 votes. That's too close. So they're trying to remove 7 times as many voters as his margin. Almost all the voters that they're removing, I got the lists. I went to the Board of Elections, which, by the way, is working with Greg Palast. How about that for something brand new? And most of the voters being removed are from Milwaukee and Madison. Now, Madison is the university students. Milwaukee is African American. Now, why do you think that they would do that, Rick? I just
those are Democratic strongholds.
You think so? Yeah, exactly. Because they don't like the color of these voters. That is, their color is blue. So, yeah, I'm sorry I'm not back in Milwaukee. So I was in Milwaukee just before the lockdown, investigating the fix that they're trying to put in. So as far as the convention, yeah, I'm sorry I'm not there. Just because yeah, it is a shame. It's a lot of fun in a way if you've ever been to conventions. I do miss the freebies and the cheap food that you can pick up from all these lobbyists.
There is that. The weird thing is as you were talking, my mind is spinning back to our conversation a couple of months ago, where the focus had been cross-check, and that was one of the ways they were going to steal it. And now the mail-in ballot is magnified that even further. That they're going to kick you off and then not deliver you a ballot. I mean, it's.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to point out. And please, everyone, the number one thing you can do to get your mail-in vote counted?
Make sure you're registered.
Make sure you're registered. They ain't going to send you no damn ballot if you are not registered. You can ask for it, but you're not going to get it. And so, and by the way, 16.7 million people have been purged, that is eliminated from the voter rolls in the past 2 years of record keeping. 16.7 million. I was one, because I looked up Greg Palast, even here in California, and said no such voter. So I re-registered online. Then I got my ballot for the primary. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have no vote, and I wouldn't even know that I'm purged. You have to understand, when you're not added onto the voter rolls or you've been removed, I say not added on. If you're one of those people that went to the DMV, you moved your household, you got a new driver's license, you filled out that yellow form at the back of the driver's license form to re-register at your new address. Well, guess what? The chance is close to 40% in a lot of states. Your name will never be entered on the voter rolls. Just because you filled it out at the DMV doesn't mean an awful lot to people like Brian Kemp in Georgia. All it means is that you've handed someone who doesn't want you to vote your registration form. Don't trust it. Check online, and virtually almost every single state allows you to register online. So if you're missing, re-register right there, take a screenshot. Then you can get your mail-in ballot.
There you go. Now, what happens if you register every year? You just decide, every year I'm going to register just to make sure.
I actually recommend that to people because there's something called the Inactive List. This is a new gimmick that the GOP has. If you've missed 1 or 2 elections, they say you're inactive. Now, what the hell does that mean? That you haven't gone to the gym? No, it means that you haven't voted in a couple elections. So they're going to say, well, that means we can't send you a ballot because, and understand, federal law, specifically in big black bold letters, and it's literally bolded in the law, you can't lose your vote for failing to vote. Now, as you decide not to vote, that's an American right.
Right.
Not vote. But they'll say, if you didn't vote, well, then you probably moved away.
Or you died.
Or you died. So therefore, if you're dead or you moved away, you shouldn't be voting in where you're registered. So again, the idea of going online, checking, if you're not there, re-register, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And also if you have by attempting to register online or checking your registration, that takes you off the inactive list, because under federal law, it makes you active. Even saying, where's my registration, or asking for a ballot makes you active.
There you go.
It's crazy stuff, Rick, but that's the rules.
Good stuff. The book, How Trump Stole 2020, Greg Palast's new book. Make sure you get that. Also, check out gregpalast.com. Lots of good information there, Greg, as always. Appreciate you taking time. Great information. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
We will. Take it easy, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Greg Palast. Again, remember, check out his website, gregpalast.com. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Every now and then, someone comes along whose work is so productive, honest, and inspirational that they ought not be allowed to die. That's how I felt last month when I heard that John Lewis had slipped away from us. Throughout his exemplary life, this civil rights icon and progressive leader had hurled his heart, soul, and head, literally, into fighting for the voting rights of all Americans. In 1965, he was among the marchers on the front line in Selma, Alabama, with Martin Luther King Jr., who had their heads busted by state troopers for daring to insist that African Americans be allowed to vote. That bloody encounter led to passage of America's historic 1965 Voting Rights Act, which empowered grassroots organizers to usher in a remarkable era of political progress. Black voter registration jumped nearly 70% the next year, and black citizens began getting elected, including Lewis, who later won a Georgia congressional seat. The importance of Lewis, though, was that he didn't just sit in that seat. He put it to use daily, battling what I call the 6 Bs, bosses, bankers, billionaires, big shots, bastards, and BSers, who keep trying to knock down the middle class, hold down the poor, and tear down people's democratic rights. Most significantly, he inspired ordinary people to recognize their own strength and common interest, rallying us to unify and organize around the values of fairness and respect for human dignity. This is Jim Hightower saying his lasting message was simple, direct, and true. Democracy is not a state, he said. It is an act. If we the people are to control our own destiny, we have to stand together against the moneyed and political elites who keep imposing their plutocratic control over us. We have to be willing, as John Lewis put it, to get into good trouble, necessary trouble.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's populist take on what the powers that be are up to. Find out more at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting story coming out of New York. The head of the New York Teachers Union is saying that his name is Michael McGrew. He's saying that look, if we don't get the kind of safety precautions put in place, if we don't get the the list of things that we're requiring to reopen schools, we're not coming back. There's potentially going to be a strike. Because you've got the mayor who's pushing for reopening and also giving the option to have completely online or virtual learning. But good on the teachers for not putting up with this. At some point, we need the voice of reason and sanity to at some point to kind of prevail. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the teaching profession, on education, on maybe the strike in New York. I've asked Caroline Rennie to come talk with us. She's a New York teacher. She's written a fantastic poem titled "This Time You'll See," and it is a powerful poem at that. Caroline, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi.
So let's start with the strike idea. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that it's come to that. I think, we've been pushing for a lot of months to to have these safety precautions in place, and common sense, should prevail, like you said. And I just feel like we're not getting that kind of the leadership either. I mean, you mentioned de Blasio, but I really feel like Cuomo keeps putting it back on the teachers and the parents. And I really feel like we need to keep pushing because, we'll see. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's just one of those things that we've been saying for a while. I got to look to the educated, the smart, the articulate to save us, because the reactionary politicians are not going to be our savior. But I do want to turn to your poem. I found it very, very interesting and kind of bipolar in the way it kind of puts teachers in. You're the hero and the savior, and you're also the problem, and you're horrible. And I know that was the reason for it, but I thought it was incredible, and I hope people will take a look at it.
Yeah, the response was actually pretty overwhelming. I kind of posted it. My family and I were on vacation, actually, and we were at the lake, and things were moving as far as, the back-to-school plans were starting to be discussed, and I couldn't sleep. And it just it struck me that it does very much feel like an abusive relationship sometimes in this profession, where, like you said, the messages are very bipolar, where, you're thanked 1 minute, and then the next minute, you're thrown under the bus for every problem in education and with children, with society in general. We're greedy, but we're also selfless. And I feel like that really starts right when you enter student teaching. It's almost like a gaslighting, where you have to become a martyr just to do the job even sufficiently. And it's things, some of the lines in the poem were things that I've said to myself. There are things that colleagues have said to me. There are things that we've said to each other. There are obviously things that are from sort of the national conversation about teachers. And so I needed to get it out and articulate it. And it was really kind of amazing, the response that it got. It really seemed to touch a nerve online. And then, BAT contacted me to post it on their blog. So, but all of the comments that I've gotten from teachers are that it felt 100% true. And actually some of the most striking ones that I got were from teachers that I have had who have since retired. And they said, you put into words what I've been trying to articulate about my, 35-year career. So that's been really amazing too. Yeah,
I mean, it's as I was reading through it, I'm going, wow, this is, to see it in its entirety, in this whole thing, you go, wow, who would want to do this job? Because all of it is, stuff I've heard in one place or another, but never in one place altogether. And this is kind of that. My youngest daughter keeps saying she wants to be a teacher, and I'm like, no, read this. No, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, I would have told my students, like, absolutely, we need more teachers like you. We need people to enter this profession. And now I don't know if I would give the same advice. I don't know if I would give myself the same advice that I would have given myself, 5 years ago. It's and I feel like everything about the pandemic and education, if it was true in education before the pandemic, it's even more true now.
Right.
It just feels like everything is just exacerbated, and it's just intensified like 100-fold.
Yeah, I mean, this pandemic on a lot of levels has magnified and highlighted our inequities and our deficiencies. From child care to health care to education, to our infrastructure, to our governance. Everything that we thought was a problem at the beginning of the year is now that much worse now after having lived through these last couple of months.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm seeing a lot of like posts online where teachers are doing like amazing things in their classrooms to get ready for this pandemic teaching and make it less scary for the kids. But it also worries me a little bit that the expectation with this will just be that we do what we always do, that we come in and we take Can I use strong language?
No.
Okay. We take what we're given and we make magic out of it. And I don't know.
I know where you were going.
That we can.
And I
yeah.
agree.
But I don't know that this is the time for that. I mean, it's completely different than working with out of date textbooks, or a curriculum that needs updating or performing for these standardized tests. We're literally in imminent danger potentially.
Yeah.
And
As
I
are
don't
the
know how
students.
as are the students. Yeah. And I don't know that just making some cute things, and making the kids feel comfortable as possible. And, just doing our jobs to the best of our ability, it still doesn't feel like it's enough.
But do you think that's part of the problem, Carolyn, the idea that you guys, as teachers, as a profession, rise to the occasion, that when there are problems, you figure out solutions? We hear all of these stories about teachers, digging into their own pocket to buy supplies for kids who don't have it, filling kids' backpacks with food so they have something to eat over the weekend. I mean, there's just all of these incredible stories out there. And I'm one of the people who say, it's great that they do it, but it's a shame that they do. And they shouldn't have to. We should have better systems to ensure all this stuff happens. So is it by you guys doing this and being selfless and doing all these things that you're actually making the situation worse?
Yeah, I think we've enabled the system for sure. But on the other hand, when you have a kid who's hungry and standing in front of you, I'm going to reach into my pocket for him, or I'm going to reach into my drawer and, buy snacks and keep them in the room just in case. So, it's like a catch-22. It's almost an impossible situation where, yes, you have the system that isn't functioning, and is we're by doing all that we do, we're enabling it to continue to function the way it is. But also, you have the very real, students in front of you who need you to do these things. You go home and you lay awake and you think about them. So yeah, it's sort of like what my poem is saying. It's kind of this abusive cycle where, unless major change happens, I don't know how we break it.
And what kind of changes would we be pursuing? For me, this is one of these moments. I'm looking at this virus as a moment of opportunity. I'm looking at the fact that, our eyes are open and we're awake to the reality that things are not perfect, that things are not right, that we need to be fixing things, and education and, being part of that. What do you believe needs to be done to make the profession much more of a profession and move away from the factory work mentality that I've been seeing as teaching to the test and all this, and also making it to where, your life matters too.
Yeah. First of all, I think, paying us what we're worth, as educated people, as experts, you want to attract the best people to the profession, and we don't have who wants to walk into a profession, first of all, where you're going to be underpaid, for the level of expertise and education you're supposed to have. So I think just, first of all, attracting the best and brightest and making the career appealing enough to attract the best and brightest. There's all the classic lower class sizes, making our workload more manageable so that we can actually give, the attention and the feedback that the kids need. I think it's really important to change the cultural conversation around teachers. I'm seeing a lot of us attacked now, on news stories and websites where, we're being blamed for for parents not being able to go back to work. Whereas in other countries, you don't necessarily see that. I think there's a real culture in our country that's sort of anti-intellectual, and teachers are sort of seen as, the enemy in that sense as well. We're, brainwashing children, or, we have our agendas that we're pushing.
Yeah, I've been seeing that. I've been seeing that a lot. That one particularly a lot. that, we
Yeah.
shouldn't be sending our kids back to those liberal, dens of inequity and
Yeah.
making them, brainwashed. I've been wondering where that's coming from.
I mean, I think it's a lot of cultural forces, and it's not anything necessarily new, but it does seem to be, I think, especially exacerbated under the Trump administration. We don't, when you have a leader who's not listening to the experts,
Yeah.
why would the country listen to the experts?
That's a good point. But with all the stuff we're talking about, is part of it, in your opinion, the fact that the teaching profession is a female-dominated profession, and that we've got a president who thinks any woman who speaks up is a nasty woman? Could it be you nasty women who have just ruined this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to do that. Yeah, I think it's definitely, I mean, historically, we're marginalized and underpaid because it's a female-heavy profession. We don't necessarily always like women who speak up and take strong positions. And so when a teachers union, rises up and asks for these things that we very desperately need to actually do our jobs and teach kids, we're sort of seen as being greedy, and all we care about is money and summers off. And, no teacher ever takes the whole summer off. My whole summer has been about school. It's been kind of all consuming to the point where I have to step away and remind myself that I need to not go into the school year burnout already.
Right.
And I really think that we're going to be seeing a lot of teacher burnout to the point where, people are going to question and leave the profession in droves. We already have a shortage, and I think this is all just going to exacerbate that for sure.
No, I mean, the weird thing is and maybe this is a good thing, but a lot of the female-dominated professions are getting burnt out during this, and there's talk of mass exodus. I mean, healthcare, education. You're seeing a lot of nurses, a lot of nursing home workers, a lot of teachers I've heard who've said, when this is over, I'm moving on.
Yeah, I mean, you can only push people so far to the point where, you have to. I mean, as teachers, it becomes such a part of your identity that it does feel like leaving is not an option. But I think a lot of people are coming to the realization that this profession does not necessarily feel the same about us as we do about it. I think, we are replaceable, theoretically, if they can find people who want to replace us. And I think it comes down to a choice of, can you handle this? Is your physical and mental health going to survive this? And I feel like, especially now, I mean, that's always been true, but especially now, it's pretty profound for people.
Yeah, I guess the last question I've got for you, in looking at this moment that we're in, are you planning on going back into the classroom if you feel it's unsafe?
I currently am. My district, we just had our meeting, and they laid out the plans. I'm going to be taking some extra precautions myself. I ordered some military grade N95. And I'll be coming home and showering every day before I even, hug my daughter. But if I really do feel unsafe, I've had that conversation with my husband that, maybe it'll be time to start rethinking our plans.
I hope everyone is safe, and I hope this works out. But it is what it is, as seems to be the popular statement here lately. But Carolyn, I appreciate the time. I hope folks will take a look at the poem. This Time You'll See, written by Carolyn Rennie. We'll make sure we get links out on social media. Carolyn, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. But again, make sure you check out the poem. We'll get links out so you can do that. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Tonight in California, fires burning at both ends of the state.
Extreme weather broils the United States.
More and more glaciers are falling into the ocean.
Greenland ice sheet potentially hits point of no return, study warns. Plus, Trump administration officially opens pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling.
All of those disappointments and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Mr. President, let me ask you about a breaking news story from the Wall Street Journal. They say the Trump administration plans to open up part of the pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we're looking at different things. We may or may not do it. We did do ANWR, as you know.
Mr. President, ANWR stands for Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. You didn't know that, did you?
You know, I hate to say it. In theory, I should go down as a great environmental president.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, 2020 has brought us a global pandemic, a plague of locusts, murder hornets, and now out here in California, fire tornadoes.
Yes, indeed it has. But more on that in a moment. First, an update on global temperature records. Europe's climate service had ranked July 2020 as the third hottest July ever recorded.
But they were wrong?
Yeah, not really. NASA and NOAA, using a different data set, have announced that July 2020 was the second warmest July since record keeping began in the mid-1800s.
See, NASA and NOAA fudging the data.
The 6 warmest Julys have all occurred in the past 6 years. We also have the earliest 11th named storm ever recorded in the Atlantic hurricane season. Tropical storm Josephine, now spinning safely away from the U.S., beat 2005's Hurricane Katrina by 10 days due to unusually warm and, in some areas, record warm oceans. The U.S. is enduring an outbreak of wild extreme weather. 75,000 Iowa residents are still without electricity more than a week after that derecho, a wall of severe storms hundreds of miles long, knocked out power during a heat wave. It also destroyed 13 million acres of Iowa's corn crop.
And for folks who don't know, a derecho is just a huge, like a hurricane in the middle of nowhere.
A hurricane on land.
Yep.
An exceptionally intense heat wave in the west is generating hazardous smog pollution and exacerbating wildfires in Colorado, Utah, and California, forcing emergency planners to scramble to arrange safe shelter for fire evacuees amid a pandemic. In Northern California, a massive wildfire spawned fire tornadoes, literally tornado force winds caused by the fire. And California's Death Valley National Park appears to have hit 130 degrees Fahrenheit on Sunday. If confirmed, that would be the new highest ever reliably recorded temperature on the planet.
I'm pretty sure that we should have a Twilight Zone episode. Just name it 2020.
In Arizona, crucial southwest monsoon rains have failed to appear. Phoenix is embroiled in its hottest summer on record to date. And yes, all of these consequences of heat are directly linked to man-made global warming, according to CBS News meteorologist Jeff Berardelli.
You know, climate change is definitely contributing to this heat wave. In fact, the West is warming faster than pretty much any other place in the United States.
Meanwhile, a new study warned late last week that, as predicted, the Greenland ice sheet is now out of balance, losing more ice into the ocean every year than it gains from snowfall. The study warns that if the rate of ice loss continues to accelerate, the ice sheet will reach a point of no return. But that tragic outcome depends on choices we make today and whether governments choose to cut greenhouse gas emissions that cause dangerous global warming. That's according to glaciologist Harry Zekulari of Delft University in an interview with France 24.
It's clear that there's too much ice being lost, And so there's no equilibrium. But of course, what we're going to do today and the actions that we're going to take will have a big influence on the future evolution.
Also in the Arctic Circle, on Monday, the Trump Interior Department released final plans to open up more than 1 million acres of the pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil and gas drilling, overturning 5 decades of protection for the largest remaining stretch of wilderness in the United States. Native American tribes and environmental groups have already promised to sue to stop the drilling.
And Donald Trump doesn't even know that Anwar is the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Finally, in Alaska's North Slope, where man-made global warming is rapidly melting permafrost, oil giant ConocoPhillips plans to use massive industrial chillers to keep the Arctic tundra frozen beneath its roads and oil drilling pads, literally to refreeze the soil so that they can continue drilling for the oil that is causing the warming, that in turn is causing the permafrost to melt beneath their feet. Irony is dead in 2020.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to or didn't want to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said earlier, it's official. Joe Biden is the guy. Even though AOC did nominate Bernie, which, look, Bernie was my first choice. Very open, very honest about that, followed by Elizabeth Warren. In fact, the two of them far and away my first two choices. But at this moment, as we sit, Joe Biden's the guy for me. And look, I like Joe Biden as a person. I think he's a good guy. I've met him a number of times over the years. I think he will bring dignity and sanity back to the White House, something we desperately, desperately need. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the virtual convention. And maybe you'll find out if he's jonesing as much as I am over this. I've asked our good friend, former Congressman and political analyst Bob Nag to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So is this doing it for you? Is this virtual convention everything you thought it was going to be cracked up to be?
Well, if it wasn't your show, I would probably say, oh, this has just been, but I know you'll call me out. So, yeah, this is, look, I've been going to them since 1976 when I was a delegate for Ford, and, all of them, I was at the convention with you, and I'm trying, Rick. I'm really, really trying. Well done. Don't get me wrong. The program's put together. Well done. Wow. Give everybody credit. But I'm just, the balloon drop, the lack of balloon drop. Now the delegate nominations. That's interesting. That was usually painstaking. It took forever, but this was like boom, boom, boom. Here we go. But no, it's not doing it for me. Well done. But yeah, I'm an old guy. Yeah. I'm used to the real thing.
Last night we had Will Bunch on. He's the national columnist for the Philly Daily News, and he had written a piece about how the conventions are dead, and he hopes they die and go away because it's no longer about having those those interesting floor fights and all the wheeling and dealing and the things that of the past, because it's his belief that in the past you didn't really know for 100% who was going to be the person. There was always some maybe some tension, and I don't know I necessarily agree with that totally.
Right.
But this is fully a show. This is fully like just a big giant infomercial.
Right, and then also and people might call this trite, but I don't think it is for the future of politics. A lot of people go to these conventions that have stuffed the envelopes, licked the stamps, knocked on the doors, made the phone calls, right?
Yep.
So the reward is to go to convention. Wow, there's Senator Schumer, there's Nancy Pelosi, there's they gather around with people. The other thing too, you network. Right. I know plenty of people have went to conventions, got to spend time rubbing shoulders with people, and later on became county commissioner, state rep, member of Congress. They're out there. So yeah, this is the time when too you can promote yourself, get a job. There's all kinds of stuff. It's not just for the rich and famous and powerful. There's a lot of regular party loyalists who have given 30 years of their life stuffing envelopes, and this is their big day.
Yeah. No, and that's where my mind was. I go, look, I loved talking to people this was their first convention. they were like, "Oh my God, this is just the moment of my life," and I'm
sure,
as somebody who is a political junkie, and wow, hey, there's this person or that person. You go, it can be just an awesome experience, and I'm really hoping that this isn't the future. I'm hoping we go back to the days of giant stadiums full of people and all of the things that come out of it, because I do think that the party building experience is important, and I do think all of the networking and all of that stuff, and as you pointed out, the rewarding of folks who stuff the envelopes and knock on doors, I think that's really important.
Sure it is, and then in the parties too. I rented the Intrepid one year in New York Harbor, and we had people out there. We had labor, labor organizers were out there mingling with members of Congress and a lot of people, not just the lobby community, but people that were party workers for our campaigns. I mean, it's just a really cool week for everybody, and that's all gone right now.
Yeah. Are you surprised that they're still renting some of the giant spaces? I don't know. It seemed kind of weird to me.
Well, do you think it's contract obligations? That's what I was wondering.
I got to think it is. I got to think it's the contractual obligations, but I also think from Biden's perspective, it's hey, we made an agreement. We got to help these, and also we got to help these places out, because you don't want to get hit with hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic and you're pulling a Donald Trump on us.
Right. Yeah. You stiffed us.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't Trump us on this stuff, which I would fully expect Trump to try and pull, and I don't think he will, but we'll see. But I'm really looking forward to next week in the Republican convention.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to see, who they bring on, and I'm also curious to see who would they bring from the Democrat side, because look, I think Cindy McCain's time in the clip they played was powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Colin Powell, I thought was very good. So I'm just curious to see who the or if they try to do the same type of thing.
I can't imagine there's going to be many or any. But you're right. We'll see. I mean, for me though, I got to be honest. I get you want to bring some of the other side over, but John Kasich had no business being there. I don't care what justification you make. I'm sorry. I just have no. I have no mental reason to put Kasich there, other than he's obviously a never Trumper. But I'm sorry. I just can't do it.
Well, it's interesting today on Facebook. A party activist and had worked for John Boehner, the speaker, had worked for the Ohio Republican Party. He came out today and very succinctly just nailed Kasich for, quote, who Kasich is. Now, this is coming from a Republican, And people came on and said, oh, yeah, I worked for him. He made people cry. I was reading all these things. Of course, I split a county with him, as you know, Licking County.
Right.
We split it in Congress. But that was the Republican side. But on the Democratic side, and I said this today on Tennessee radio, when they asked me, what about John Kasich? I said, had the convention been live, he would have been booed. And they said, well, why is that? I said, because he put out one of the most offensive pieces of legislation and backed it to labor in modern Ohio history.
Yep.
And they said, we didn't know that. I said, yeah. I said, I promise you, had that been a live convention, there would have been boos.
There's no question about it. And not only did he put, the No Rights at Work bill out there, he did it in such an offensive way. This either you get on the bus with us or we're going to run you over, which was an exact quote from him.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's not that we're making the justification to be good for it. You're going to do it and you're going to like it. And I got a real problem with that.
Right. I think the endorsement in itself would have been enough. They served together. I understand that in the Congress. I think just the endorsement, Biden could have just used that versus having him officially. Yep. If I'd have been at the DNC, I wouldn't have liked having him there. I just wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no, especially since you're trying to court the labor movement to especially the more progressive part of the movement. People like me who want to see a repeal of Taft-Hartley. And maybe something even better. Just Kasich being there is just a bad thing for me. It's just that simple. Now looking forward, I mean, how are we expecting the Trump thing to come out? Because I'm sitting there going, what accomplishments has he had? I'm waiting to hear about all the wonderful stories about deregulation, and I'm waiting to hear about how the tax cuts, really help the rich make more money. I'm just curious what the presentation you think is going to look like.
Well, it won't be complete reality. I mean, they can say whatever they want, because I get these mailers, and I did last night again from the Trump campaign, and it was basically name calling, Sleepy Joe, and the usual things. Where normally you put out, this is the policy they came out with last night. It's not going to work for America because President Trump is better, or whatever you want to put out. And he doesn't have that. I think he's going to rely very heavily on, quote, law and order. He's going to rely on, being tough. He's not a politician. He's going to rely on China, going after China to save our American jobs. After that, though, you really can't pinpoint something, where's the, I'm not saying he hates veterans, believe me, but I'm just saying, where's the veterans' positions? What happened with the VA hospitals? How were they improved? What about education, besides DeVos and the things she's tried to do? What about education? Where's the platform there? And then the biggest one is healthcare. Are they going to come out and say, yes, we went to the court to try to undo it?
Yeah.
What do you say about healthcare if you're President Trump? And in today's world, hey, people are in turmoil over their health care unless you're, thank goodness, hey, I've got Medicare. And don't take my Medicare, I've got it. But I'm just saying, what about the regular human beings in this country that are just suffering as a result of it? And what do they say that their platform was? So I think it's going to rely on law and order. Joe's going to let them burn down America. I'm not. That's what the White House is going to say. Joe practically lived in Beijing. Trump fights them. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot. He can say, I created a great economy that's not working right now. He can. How's he going to run on that?
Yeah.
And he'll want to stay totally away from the coronavirus.
Oh, yeah. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. But, I look at, today, and I don't know if you saw the press briefing, but he's calling for a boycott of Goodyear tire. Telling people not to buy Goodyear, because evidently this is, whether you buy it or not, they're claiming that Goodyear employees have been slapped with a zero tolerance policy, that you can't wear any clothing or any articles that have Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, MAGA hats, or political affiliated slogans or materials on your clothing. You can't have it, but you can have, according to this, and I don't know that I believe it, you can have, Black Lives Matter and gay and lesbian and other stuff. You can wear that. That's fine. This is what the claim is. It's the official company policy. And what the company is saying is we have zero tolerance of anything. Nothing at the workplace. And what's interesting to me is Trump went on this little rant about how, people should be able to wear what they want. And obviously if it's a MAGA hat. And my mindset is, I don't necessarily disagree. So when I want to wear my union pin, you're okay with that, right?
Right. I see. Right.
But here's the thing. I guess my question is is this the new normal for a president to get involved in these? We're calling for a boycott of an American company. Now, granted, they make a lot of their stuff overseas, but is this the new normal, I guess?
Well, I think right now he's just trying to latch on to anything. I just saw a story today, and I didn't carry it in my news notes because, frankly, the only thing we haven't sanctioned on Iran is the air they breathe. But they were announcing, sanctions, and I thought, sanctioning what? They're already sanctioned to death. And I thought, what are they trying to come up with now? Oh, in the midst of, Joe Biden here, we're getting tough on Iran. We already know we've undone the nuclear deal and we've sanctioned them. But I saw that floated out there today. So, you're seeing these things that are just like, I don't know, throwing something up against the wall, hoping something sticks.
Yeah.
Just little things.
And the question then becomes, how much of this is, truth? How much of this is Russian propaganda? How much is this just people trolling? Like this Goodyear thing to me seems like someone was just trolling. And it caught someone's attention, and they got the president. They got the president of the United States to comment on it and to actually call for a boycott over it.
you don't ask for boycotts of American business like that anyway. You know, if you don't like what Goodyear's doing in the factory, then don't buy the tires.
It's just plain crazy. But you know, I guess this is the day, the world that we currently live in, right?
Well, it's hoping to pick up the trite and make it the valuable.
Yeah.
And it's the trite. I mean, because to me, when I see this, and I get the Democrat and I get Biden's mailers, I'm on both lists. I like to see what they're doing, you know.
Me too.
And to me, and you've seen them, they come out with, I mean, you know, the Biden camp will come out with, you know, Donald Trump's taking the country in the wrong direction. I understand, you know, how you do that. But the Trump campaign comes out with calling people ugly and names and things like that. And I'm reading, I'm like, wow, I mean, this is, not that I didn't know it was but it's juvenile.
Yeah.
It's juvenile.
No, that's what I said.
It's like a fifth grade, you know, they're running for class president in fifth grade.
Yeah, we're right back in the sandbox. I mean, it's crazy. But you know, I gotta imagine that it's playing with the base. You know, he's showing them that phony Kamala and that Sleepy Joe. I mean, I guess it's crazy. I did want to get your thoughts on what happened yesterday, which I thought the timing of it was kind of curious. But the Senate released their bipartisan report on Russia.
Right.
Nearly 1,000-page report. And I tried to get through some of it, and I read a lot of the reports on it. Nothing. I don't think that there was really nothing in there that we didn't already know. It just again, like a lot of things, like Bolton's very long book, it just confirms all of the things that we already knew all along anyway. What I find curious is why they dropped it before the election, and you know, why they chose to do it on the day that you had the roll call vote for Biden, or does that not play into the calculus, you think?
I think it was done this week because somebody within the Senate decided this would be a good week to try to get some attention on it. Frankly, I would have probably done it, you know, at some point in time, either before the convention or after the Republican convention. You know, I would have. I think it might have gotten more press. You know, this way. I'm not sure people even say, oh, Senate Intel report, really? I just don't think it was on the tip of everybody's tongue. And also, on top of it, you know, this was supposed to be such a big deal, and it was a small firecracker.
Yeah.
They released it now. We know in that report that the Trump campaign in Russia had extensive contracts, you know, and contacts, I mean. We know that. And we know that, of course, Manafort, who was the campaign manager that went to jail, we know that he had a meeting, and that restated Jared Kushner, and they speculate Kushner may be the son-in-law of the president, may be a little deeper in this than they thought. And then they identify, now this is interesting, a key individual, which was Konstantin Kimlik, and he was Manafort's former business partner, and they said he is a Russian intelligence officer, which is fascinating. The president's campaign manager had a business partner who was a Russian officer. That was a little bit, although we knew.
We knew that already.
We knew that, but it came out, and some people didn't realize it. And then the FBI came under criticism. We know that too with the Steele dossier. And here was you gotta love politics. Okay, they came to a bipartisan collusion. This is a collusion. They came to a bipartisan statement that yes, threats from Russia persist. They came to that, and then the Republicans split with the Democrats on one thing, which was. There was no collusion by Trump, and the Democrats said, yes, there was collusion by the Trump campaign. But then they came back and ended it by saying, here's how we move forward. And they had a little game plan on how they move forward, which is not even worth us kind of arguing or talking about today.
But, you know, this report, again, and I go back to what I said originally, my view on this right from the very start was I thought they were dolts. I thought they were useful idiots who were being used by Russian assets and probably didn't know and actually didn't care. I look at someone like Kushner as the ultimate in ambition. He'll do anything, say anything, cheat, lie, steal, whatever he has to do to get ahead and win. And I saw the Trump campaign as that. Don't care. I don't care, you know, what I violate. I don't care if I have to commit treason. We're going to win at all costs. And this is kind of what this report tells me. They were willing to take information or take meetings with any of the most unsavory characters just to get what they wanted. And ultimately they did. Now, the one thing that was in here that was, kind of interesting is, they claim that Roger Stone did what Roger Stone was accused of doing, and that is, having conversations about with WikiLeaks. And Michael Cohen came out and said that Stone talked to Trump about it because he was there. So that would mean if that is true, then he lied to the Mueller folks when he wrote out the things that he had no idea what he was talking about.
Right. If they can make those dots absolutely connect, that's what it would say. Now, and not to break anybody's bubble that's listening, but in politics, and it happened every election I have been in, where you get the word from your campaign manager that somebody has some really, really sensitive stuff about your opponent. I mean, they can't even dare to talk to you on the phone. They want to meet with you. The first thing we did is I didn't meet with them. The second thing we did is my campaign manager didn't meet with them. If we had a third removed neighbor who had a cousin that knew this person, they might have a chat with them, just to keep them, from screaming at us. But you don't ever bring them into the campaign headquarters. You don't do that. You have all kinds of research, opposition research, which is, digging up dirt. Everybody does it, but you don't do what they did.
Right.
You don't.
And how this is explained away by my friends on the right is, well, he's not a politician. He's not as smart as Bob Ney. Bob Ney understands the game. That's why we like him. He's a businessman. And I said from the beginning, they were just using all of their business contacts to do what they do, screw over the American taxpayer.
Right.
And mission accomplished. They got all the dirt they wanted, and they're still benefiting from it. And look, when Trump told Stephanopoulos that if the Russians were offering him information, he might take a look at it. I believe there's no question he would take it.
Right.
Even after all this, I still don't believe that they would not take it.
Right. Well, if you remember, they made a statement that sort of to the fact that if this happened again, they might consider what information they would get. They even made that statement.
Just plain crazy. Lastly, the post office, a good pressure. Made some. Are we trusting the Postmaster General to not dismantle the 671 machines and not steal all the boxes off the corners and not do what they were doing to slow things down? Are we trusting them at all?
Trust and verify, as Ronald Reagan said. I think that this has now become so out front, so high profile. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy has stopped the changes he was going to make until after the November election. I just think it became so hot, and with Nancy Pelosi calling the House back just to zero in on this, I think he's made enough statements now. I think there'll be enough inspector generals and whistleblowers that they're going to have to take the plans they had and put them, by the wayside. Of course, it's still a matter of $25 billion that the House Democrats are supporting, and the Republicans said they're open to $10 billion. So I imagine even them saying they're open to $10 billion means there'll be some money that will go into the system. But I think the changes for right now are by the wayside. If there's a going back on that promise, then somebody's got to blow the whistle immediately because we're running out of time. So I think it's sort of be watchful and verify what he said now.
Right, but here's the thing, and this is where my mind goes. Back in the end of July, the Treasury Department was gonna float a $10 billion loan to the Postal Service. Did that ever happen? Do we know? And the weird thing about it was, if you remember, the Treasury Department wanted all of the contract information for the top 10 postal accounts. And I thought that was kind of curious that they wanted all of the contract information. I know they wanted to know what Amazon's paying and what rates people are paying. It just seemed kind of curious to me that the Treasury would say, well, we'll give you this loan, but we want all this information so we can maybe hold it over your head.
Well, and that might be because back in it was either the last day of July or the first day of August, I forget which, but the postmaster actually announced that the Postal Service had an agreement in theory with the Department of Treasury, like you said, and that was for $10 billion in the CARES Act. That's where it was coming from.
Right. Now, is that still on the table, and there's $25 billion above and beyond that, or did that $10 billion not happen?
Well, that's what's interesting. I had ironically looked this up about 2 days ago, and the postmaster said he appreciated Steve Mnuchin for working with him to reach the agreement and the terms and conditions and the access to $10 billion and borrowing authority. I have to assume, because I haven't seen anything different, and that was in August, I think the 4th. They've got the agreement.
Okay, so
which makes me wonder why nobody in Congress is saying, where is that money? Where is it in the system? Did it go to what it was supposed to go to? Because we all know, and this is a flaw, I will blame both parties. I will blame anybody who voted for the CARE Act. The flaw is they didn't demand it be transparent. Of course, it's really not transparent.
Yeah.
You find out bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So as far as I know, they got the agreement. Where the money went, I have not seen one article on that.
Yeah, and we're finding out, more and more that a lot of the money went to Chinese companies.
Right. Right.
Look, I know they were just in a hurry to get money out the door. I get that, but at some point, devil is in the details.
Rick, when they look back on this, I know personal cases of law firms that somebody asked for $10,000, they offered him $250,000. In fact, one of the heads of the law firm said, "I am not taking that money." $250,000 for what?
Yeah. Does that? Do you think that's going to come back at some point and bite them? Was that their justification? Was that their rationale? That I don't want to get tied up in what could come down the road. If we asked for 10, we got $250,000, and we kept it. Is there rationale, the fear that the government's going to come hammering down on them, or is this lawyers having a conscience and saying, this is too far for me, even as a lawyer?
Well, I happen to know the one head of the law firm, and he said he just didn't like the way it looked or it smelled. He didn't want problems down the road, and he said, plus, he didn't even ask for $250,000.
Yeah.
He said they didn't even ask for that originally. So, probably a mixture of everything. But that's just one example of, people that are out there and they've gotten money. One day probably we'll be talking about this next year when this whole list comes out where they actually find out where everything went.
Yeah, good point. And I hope that does happen. I want to know where that trough of money
I wish it would
went.
happen tomorrow, but, it's not.
Not going to happen with Mitch McConnell head of the Senate. That ain't going to happen. But, Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, my good friend, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our good friend, Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1997. That was the day that a strike by the Teamsters Union against UPS ended with a victory for the union. The strike had started 15 days earlier. More than 180,000 UPS workers participated in the action. It was the first nationwide strike by UPS workers. At the time, UPS delivered 80% of all packages in the United States. The company, known for its signature brown trucks, delivered 12 million packages a day. The key issue of the strike was that the company increasingly relied on part-time workers. The insecurities of part-time work were growing, not just at UPS, but for workers in industries all across the country. The strike settlement came with the union winning its core issues. The company agreed to convert 10,000 part-time jobs to full-time positions over the course of the next 5 years. The victory was significant for the U.S. labor movement. The 1980s and 1990s saw new attacks on labor unions and working people, starting with President Ronald Reagan's breaking of the Air Traffic Controller Union strike in 1981. The UPS victory in a national strike with broad rank-and-file support encouraged working people beyond the Teamsters Union. Announcing the settlement of the strike, ABC News anchor Peter Jennings declared, quote, "It's been the most dramatic confrontation between industry and organized labor in in 2 decades. Teamsters President Ron Carey said, quote, "It's what this country needs. Decent jobs, a chance for the dream, a chance to purchase a home, a chance to bring your children up properly, a chance to send them to college. Enough is enough, and it's about time that people start fighting back on this." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this Goodyear thing has got me kind of sideways because you've got a president saying we're going to boycott Goodyear, and from what I'm looking at and I'm hoping that someone will clarify it even better than what I've found. It looks like the company didn't authorize this list, that this was kind of a troll the way it's looking. The company's statement on after the fact was pretty clear that they have a zero tolerance policy on just about everything. And understand a lot of these companies are taking positions of we don't want any of this, and for the president to say they should be able to wear whatever they want. If they want to wear a MAGA hat, they should be able to wear a MAGA hat. And I'm actually completely on board with that. Understand, in the world of conservative corporate rule, individual expression not really encouraged on the corporate board floor. So the idea of I guess what's laughable to me is that this has been painted as, those lefties, those radicals, those socialists, those others, the Black Lives Matter people, they're getting preferential treatment from this global corporation, which is just incredibly laughable. In that, the corporate mold is, well, one, to stay away from that kind of stuff at all, and to make sure their employees wear nothing, especially not a union pin. But you would think, and this is one of those weird kind of moments, that they wouldn't get themselves in the middle of it. As they pointed out in their press release, Goodyear became the focus of a conversation that created some misconceptions about their policy. For those not aware, they said, a widely circulated image sparked a strong reaction, and we wanted to take the opportunity to provide some important context. First, the visual, they say, was not created or distributed by Goodyear Corporate, nor was it part of a diversity training class. So, the premise, not there. They said, to be clear, our longstanding corporate policy, Goodyear has zero tolerance of any forms of harassment or discrimination. To enable a work environment free of those, we ask that associates refrain from workplace expression in support of political campaigning for any candidate or political party, as well as similar forms of advocacy that fall outside the scope of racial justice and equality issues. They're kind of being clear about it. They said, second, we appreciate the diverse viewpoints of all of our more than 60,000 associates, which are at the heart of many of the policies we establish. Fostering an inclusive, respectful workplace is important to establish teamwork and build culture. They say, which is another reason we ask associates not to engage in political campaigning of any kind in the workplace for candidates, political parties, or political organizations. They say, third and finally, Goodyear has always wholeheartedly supported both equality and law enforcement and will continue to do so. These are not mutually exclusive. We have heard from some of you that believe Goodyear is anti-police and reacting to the visual. Nothing could be further from the truth, and we have the utmost appreciation for the vital work police do on behalf of our shared communities. This cannot be said strongly enough. That's their official statement. Me personally, I think you should be able to wear your MAGA hat to work if you want to. You should be able to wear your Black Lives Matter T-shirt if you want. I believe you should have that. The problem becomes is, when that conflict in the workplace happens, how do you deal with that? Our president has said, boycott. So we're going to boycott those folks, which I have a problem with the president jumping in the middle of that. But hey, we are in the world in which we are in. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. As always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to be an interesting next couple of days. Now that we have an absolute nominee, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the Democratic ticket. That is a fact. Donald Trump will have his little show next week. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what they have to say. And I hope you'll tune in. And thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Welcome back to The Rick